I've been wrapping my brain around this thing for months. We at my company started doing this about a month ago, so we're about a month in. But I started reading about it, in the winter time, and the first reaction that I had, and that most people have when they've learned about this or have heard about it in any fashion, they're like, "What? How could that possibly work?" And Andrew, I watched your TED talk, and that's sort of what people responded to you when you first said, "Hey, what if we did this?"
Well, that's true, Kristi. In fact, that was my reaction as well, right? I was posing a question: how did I improve productivity in my company? What is it that was stopping my team from being as productive as they might be? And that led me to this journey of saying, well, if I traded a day off, would I get a different set of behaviors? Would I also get people in the organization to reprioritize what they're doing and to focus on, output rather than focus on time?
And it becomes quite a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy when people actually put their efforts into it. I mean, Henry Ford is often quoted as saying, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right. And so this is realistically what we do with the companies that we support through our pilot programs, is actually just say to them, look, why don't you just give it a go?
And it's interesting you brought up Henry Ford, because in America, most people say that's where the 40-hour work week concept came from, because he was, you think about how long ago it was. Even before the Queen started her reign, right? I mean, a long time ago, almost 100 years ago, post-Depression here, it was a totally different time and place. And he said, we need to figure out a way to get factory workers a schedule. And yet we still do that. Why do we still do this? Everything else in our lives are different.
That's exactly right. I mean, why is a form of working designed about, repetitive manufacturing industry in the 1920s relevant for the 21st century? But there's another bit of the Henry Ford story that's relevant, because what it was about, it was not just about putting that schedule in place. He recognized with a consumer business, the first mass market car, that he had to create a market for the car. And one way to create the market was give his workers a weekend off. And then if they got a weekend off, actually they needed to drive somewhere and fill the time. So they then buy the car. So, it's very similar to the way in which we're trying to address a schedule in what is largely a consumer-driven world today.
And you've seen this done now in different places in the world. And I think some people, and I'll say, Americans arrogantly would say, well, we work too hard. That would never work here. We sort of have this thing about us. And you've seen it work different countries, different industries. Why does it work? And why does it work kind of cross-culturally?
I think it works because people start to value how they use the time outside of work.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, one of the key things about our process is that we're giving people something that they can't put a value on. I mean, you can do all sorts of employee benefits that you want in terms of, health insurance, gym memberships, all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, this is things like enabling you to have more time with your family. And I have this grandfather down in Dunedin in our office. He works, he takes a couple of afternoons off a week. He spends his afternoon with his granddaughter. And when he tells the story about what he's done, he cries. Now that is why this works, because you get something in return that is extraordinarily precious. And that is the motivator for changing work behaviors and work attitudes.
Or the young worker that uses the time to do further education. Or, so there's, it's easy to imagine all of the family responsibilities, but then, we also have people around the world who use the time to do community things, to get involved with charities, to participate in civic duties. So what we're talking about when, and your point about Americans, but we have a work ethic. But what is work? Because realistically, we need to work at our society, work at our families, work at our health, work at our education, and work at actually making our society whole. So we're not saying don't work. We're just saying focus the work that you do in your productive space for your employer and be productive. And then that gives you time to work on being a fully fledged human.
And this concept of the holistic human and not just the worker. And, I grew up watching the people around me, the men around me work, and the men around me worked, and their identity was tied to the hours of work and the amount of time that they worked. And it was very much a badge of honor that you were, you think about the beepers, even when people needed, beepers. I'm important because I have this beeper, which means that I could be interrupted at any hour of the day. And I'm not discounting the physicians and those types of people that really need that. But, there was a time, a 10-year probably span, where having a beeper was kind of a cool thing, because it meant that whoever paid your bill, whoever was paying you, meant they needed you, and you would be willing to kind of stop everything and go. And I think the modern worker is also saying, boy, I'm not living that way. Because to your point earlier, there are things that are more precious than another $1 an hour or another title. The grandfather who's spending the time with the granddaughter, he's not going to leave that at work. He's not going to leave that job and go take more money for a different title and give that up, because you can't get that time back. It's this time, money, what's more important, what's more valuable. And I think the modern worker is teaching, baby boomers, whatever the years ago, a factory worker 50 years ago, something different. And it's fascinating to watch. Have you seen that as well, the generational kind of shift of mindset?
Yeah, look, I think, it's part of it, but I think you've got to put this in the broader historical context as well. Go back a couple of 100 years and you're in the 8-hour day movement, or the 10-hour day movement, or the 5-day movement, and all the battles that were fought throughout the 19th century to give that structure around the work day, broadly a third in each day. And you had Sunday off, and with Henry Ford, you moved to have Saturday off. So you get these shifts. And funnily enough, it is broadly once every 100 years. So we're sort of due. But I think what's happened now is clearly the pandemic has changed things. That has said actually the norms of work, where we work, no longer hold true, and that actually you can run a multinational from your kitchen table. But I think also there is an increased level of debate now around things like, mental health. There is a recognition, we were all fighting, a decade ago for women to have the right to do exactly the same as men and to burn themselves out in exactly the same way. And actually now, if you will, the argument's swinging back the other way, which is suddenly saying, doesn't everybody, and funnily enough, quite often it's the men, they need the right as well to get out of the office. And it's only when there are equal rights for men and women to have time out and to have time with their families and to have take up their fair share of care responsibilities, that's the time that we get true equality in pay and true equality in the workspace. Because when there is asymmetrical treatment, in order to compete with that individual who wants to work 40 hours a week, doesn't matter whether you're male or female, you've got to work 40 hours a week. So we've got to change the norm rather than anything else.
Because we've got all the legislation in place to pull women up in the workplace and to equal things out. But our society settles itself into this norm of more women than men taking time out, for example, for parental leave, but certainly for other care duties too. And so we've done all this to pull women up, but we're not giving an opportunity for men to get out in the same way, making it a lot more safe for them, normalizing men not spending as much time at work. And so this is, I think, one of the really important things that we're trying to do about how that, balances the gender issue.
Have you seen in the companies that have been doing this for several years, have you seen more equality at leadership levels? Have you seen more women who are able then to kind of rise to levels? Because across, globally, women still well in the workforce are not at the heads of leadership, heads of states. They're getting there, but it's still woefully disparate.
Yeah, I think the measure, of course, is also how many of our men are actually spending time with their, outside of work, and spending time with their families. All of the wonderful stories that really, the story I love is about a father of a young girl who starts work at 10 o'clock in the morning, 5 days a week. So he works for reduced hours, but it's not a 4-day week. He arrives to work at 10 o'clock in the morning, having walked his daughter to school. And I challenge any of the fathers that are listening to this podcast, who wouldn't want that? And so it's and that's perfectly normal. And he's in the IT department. No one's jumping over him, and everything. He's in a division. But what we need to make sure is that. So at the moment, people will say, yes, but we offer, the ability for people to have reduced work or flexible work. But not everybody takes it. So part of what we're talking about is ensuring that your entire organization either is on it or working towards being on it, so that therefore within your organization there is no benefit to work long hours and be stupid. It is honoring those shorter hours.
And I have to say, of course, here we're staying in the United Kingdom at the moment. We've just actually managed to get another one. We've lost one woman at the top, but we've got another one that's come in as Prime Minister.
Yes.
And so, it's starting to happen. I think in fairness, the US still has quite a way to go. I'm told that the last female ruler of the United States was Queen Anne.
You're far ahead of us in leadership there. I just, with the Queen's passing, they were, and with the new Prime Minister, I believe that I heard, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, that there currently is not a white man in the highest level of government there.
Well, apart from the new king, yes.
Yes, right. That was true for like a week or like a day. Actually, it was true for a day. Yes.
But yes, yeah, she has a very, very diverse cabinet, and even there is a chap who is white, but he's also of African descent as well. So, it is about recognizing that's the sort of diversity that is realistically in UK politics these days. And curiously, it's more in the Conservatives than it is in the in the Labour Party.
In the what you would have traditionally said as the Liberal. Yeah, it's very interesting. But yeah, so things are happening. They're not happening as fast as people want, but I think it does come back to the fact that families make rational business decisions for themselves. And they look at, who's got the career prospects, who's earning more money. And that is the thing that determines for them, who takes the break. And so one of the challenges here is we've got to break that. We've got to make it so it's the norm for everybody to be able to take those sensible decisions, and you're not penalized. And frankly, there are leadership teams, boards who are very traditionalist, and we've got to recognize that. These exist, company after company, country after country. And the norm is the norm, that we're having to get these people, that generation, to start to challenge this whole concept that working longer gets better output. And, that's really, I think, fundamentally what we're trying to do. And it's why I, in particular, talk about this from the business perspective as being something that actually drives productivity, it drives profitability, and it makes for a better business, rather than, it's easy to just argue on the work-life balance side.
It's a sensible business decision. So I want to also make 2 points. To be too clear, we are not talking about a reduction in pay. So we have a principle called the 100-80-100 rule. So we're talking 100% pay, 80% time, 100% productivity. So the pay and productivity are are connected to each other, and what the business is trying to do is actually drop hours by a good 20%. And so that might mean a 4-day week, it might mean a 32-hour work week, it might be that if your organization works 60 or 70 hours, you might be just trying to get down to 40 or 45. But it's about recognizing those hours.